Welcome to the Rock's Back Pages podcast. My name's Barney Hoskyns. I'm here with my colleague Mark Pringle.
Hi, Barney.
Hello, Mark. We will be talking later about Elbow. We will be hearing clips from the week's audio interview, which is with Ginger Baker, and we will in general be talking about everything that's new on Rock's Back Pages this week. We will also be talking about and with David Hepworth. Welcome.
Hello, nice to be in your cupboard.
The cupboard welcomes you.
Yes. David Hepworth live from the Rock's Back Pages cupboard. It's a great pleasure.
All the best things are done in cupboards. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Nothing against it.
Perhaps we better not go
all
down
the best
that road.
podcasts are done in cupboards.
Oh, best
Seriously.
podcasts.
They're not done in posh studios. They're done in cupboards.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Well, it's lovely to have you in the cupboard. Welcome.
Surrounded by your history as a journalist.
Many of the magazines that you've written for, some
the
that you
ill-advised
launched.
features.
David, we're going to talk about your long and illustrious career as a writer, as an editor, as a publisher, and now as a best-selling author. Which is, wow, this has been a sort of late-blooming new iteration of the David Hepworth that many of us have known for decades. And, congratulations on the success.
Very much.
You're now not just an author, you're a brand, which I think is very clever. You brought all your
Purely by
expertise.
accident, I have to tell you.
What was the accident?
No, the branding issue, I've got a number of books which all kind of happily look similar on the outside, Started out with a book about 1971, and most really, I've got a book coming out.
I'm holding it in my
hand. Called The
hand.
Rock and Roll A-Level, which is a kind of quiz book, which is also the same kind of livery. And the reason that happened is that the first book, I had very much a hand in the designing the look of, being a magazine person.
Yeah, exactly.
You do.
Yeah. You had an unfair advantage.
Absolutely. You say to a publisher, no, that's the most important thing. I want to be involved in that. I will bore the designer, to tears about how it's got to be this picture, not that picture. And they were very pleased with it. Yeah. And then when it came to time to do the second book, Uncommon People, The Rise and Fall of the Rock Stars, they kind of sketched it out with a different colour. It was blue instead. It looked similar, but it was blue. And I said, look, based on my experience, and pretty much my experience with Q, because if you remember, the first issue of Q was a white logo on a red patch.
This was McCartney on the cover, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then the second one was white Q on a blue patch.
Oh.
And then it was white on a yellow and white on a green and white. And after a while, Mark, Ellen and myself and Andy Cowles, the art director, said, there's no point changing it. Just use the most powerful one, which is white on red.
Yes.
And so I said to the publisher, how about you just make it so it's recognizably the same family, rather than doing something that is different but not as good? And they looked at me like, wow, that's revolutionary thinking.
I think you may have revolutionized
and they've been really pleased that they did it ever since. But it's just based on my experience
you're absolutely following in the footsteps of the classic Penguin books, which did exactly the same thing. So. There's a real case for that, without a doubt. Yeah.
Deb, we'll be talking about the new book, The Rock and Roll A-Level, subtitled A Very Hard Pop Quiz.
I got the first one right, and then it's downhill.
Downhill all the way.
Good.
Yeah. I think what we're going to do is we're going to ask you some of the questions and make damn sure you know the answers. But we'll look forward to talking about this in a moment. I wanted to go really back to the beginning of your story. I also think sort of things that I'd be interested to know, like how you first met Mark Ellen. But you grew up in Yorkshire and you came to London at a certain point.
I came to London at the age of 18 as soon as I possibly could.
To become a member of the Metropolitan Elite.
Yeah, absolutely.
Successfully.
Laughably, I was one of those people who sort of thought they wanted to be an actor when I was about 17 years old. And my parents, being like everybody's parents at the time, said, I'll tell you what, don't do that. Go and be a teacher instead. So I went and studied to be a teacher and taught for a year. But really, that wasn't what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do was be near records. So I got a job in the H&V shop in Oxford Street and worked there for about 3 years. And during that time, Fred Deller used to come in from the NME to do the imports column for the NME.
Right.
And Fred, lovely guy.
Lovely man.
And Fred was the kind of guy, unlike most rock journalists, that you would, air quotes, rock journalists. Fred, very approachable chap, you know. And so I said to Fred, if I wrote something, would you read it? And so I wrote something. He said, yes, of course, I wrote it. And he read it. He said, yeah, it's quite good. And then next I said, if I did, do you think I could get anything published in the NME? Which was just my wildest dreams, you know. I said, well, you never know. And so I wrote something, and he put me in touch with Bob Woffington, who at the time was a reviews editor. Yeah. This would be about 1975, I suppose, something like that. And so I started contributing little reviews. I was really way down the totem pole, you know, as you can imagine. You know.
Well, we all have to
absolutely. You know, the enemy had a hierarchy that, you know, would have been recognisable to courtiers at Versailles. And you know, started doing that. You know, so I was doing it as a bit of a sideline while working in a record shop, and then I wanted to work for a small record company. I worked for
Berserkly, that's a good start.
Which taught me a lot. And then when I kind of jacked that in, I thought I'm going to try and do this full time. And there was no work around. And I thought, I rang Fred again.
Wow.
I said, Fred, do you know any work around? And Fred, being the sweetest man alive, said, Nick Logan's just started this magazine called Smash Hits.
Wow.
And he could do with some help. So I rang Nick. And Nick pretty much said, can you come in tomorrow? You know, because he started this thing, it was done 2 monthly issues or whatever. It was just going great guns, and he needed people to help write it and put it together. And so I pretty much went in there and never left.
And that's where you met Mark Ellen, I'm guessing.
I know, I kind of met Mark before while working for the record company.
Didn't he?
Yeah, I met him while working for Berserkly Records. He
was a Jonathan Richman fan.
We met at a terrible earthquake gig in Salford Poly, and I think it's 1976 or something like that.
You can't make it up,
and
can
it
you?
was just terrible. Even I thought it was terrible, and I was a guy from the record company. And Mark Ellen characteristically was going, that was amazing. And so, you know, that's where I met him, and then kind of, you know, rejoined. When he joined, he contributed to Smash Hits, and then when I became editor, he became number 2 there, kind of thing.
Obviously, working for Smash Hits, working for Nick Logan, you were working with and for one of the great editors and editors/publishers of that age. That must have been amazing training for you, seeing him in action as an editor.
It was. I kind of mistakenly thought everybody was like Nick. Of course, I subsequently learned that they weren't at all. But what I learned with Nick was that your job, the editor, is to stand over the layout, smoking tons of cigarettes, as we did in those days, and decide how it was going to look, and how it was going to play, and how it was going to communicate, and what the headline was, and what the captions were. And all those things were massively important, hugely important kind of craft skills, which he passed on.
Sure.
You know, and that was the thing that was the secret ingredient of Smash Hits, which was then taken into Q.
Yes, absolutely.
It's very much the same
I mean,
thing.
That was the answer to my question. It wasn't a question. But for me, I didn't read Smash Hits at the time because I was an NME snob. You know, Smash Hits was for kids. Now in my job, one of the joys is going through like the first 4-5 years of Smash Hits, because it's just so funny. You've got people like Neil Tennant writing some of the funniest copy you'll sort of see anywhere. No one is taken seriously, and for me, that's just
well, I'll tell you what, I've got a WhatsApp group with Mark Ellen and Barry McElhenney, so 3 former editors of Smash Hits, and we regularly communicate. And the most recently was when Sam Smith announced that henceforth he wished to refer to as they,
because
gender issues. And I just said to Barry and Mark, how do you deal with this if you're Smash Hits? You know, seriously.
Absolutely.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Because the whole deal with Smash Hits was that you kind of, the whole attitude of Smash Hits is pop stars. They're a rum lot, aren't they? You know what I mean? And he was quite sympathetic. It wasn't unkind about anybody, but it was like, now that's weird. You know what I mean? Well, now you can't say
do that
because
you will
anymore.
You will offend
because
so many people.
It's a serious gender issue, isn't it? Rather than kind of
that's
wacky. And
the other thing that struck me looking at it is how broad the variety of types of acts that you wrote about. I mean, you get like the angelic upstarts.
There was nobody who was not in Smash Hits.
Yeah, I know. It was
nobody.
I mean, again, that would be impossible now. Now everything's been salami sliced into it, sort of.
Yeah, well, I think what happens is that with all successful music titles back in the day, which is you start out trying to appeal to everybody you can, and then you find hotspots.
Right.
And then you kind of reverse engineer to favour the hotspots.
Yeah.
And so whatever it has an inclination to become, it becomes exclusively that thing.
Yeah.
Because by then you've got competitors
Exactly.
who are making it more difficult for you to move around.
Well, the second piece that we've selected to feature you on the homepage this week, David, is an interview with Ian Dury and Wilco Johnson, which, in a way, one would be surprised to find those two veterans of the sort of pub rock scene in Smash Hits in 1980. But there was room for everything. As you said, there were pieces like the angelic upstarts. And everyone was in there.
But also people like Ian Dury love Smash Hits.
Yeah,
of course.
He appreciated the value of Smash Hits.
Yeah.
And I think one of the pieces, I think I wrote this for Smash Hits, around about the time of Reasons to be Cheerful, which is his great listing of everybody he kind of admires. And I just sat on a bus with him going up to Sheffield, I think, and said, right, let's just go through the lyrics. Tell me who all these people were. Bono Colliano or whatever. And he did, and he was absolutely delighted to do it. And, Smash Hits was always in favour of that kind of thing because it broadened people's minds.
Slightly worryingly, you did spend a period as a sort of the Police's Boswell.
I did. Somebody had to do that. Mark Allen did the Jam, and I got the Police. And I was only talking about it the other night. I was talking in Sheffield at a literary festival, and I was recalling the time when I interviewed Stuart Copeland, who at the time lived with Sonia Christina out at Kildare, not far from where we're sitting now, actually, in quite a modest house. Because they'd had all this success, but the money hadn't come in yet. And as I was leaving, he said, I've just come back from Japan and I've just been given this, try it. And he handed me this kind of box that looked like a dictating machine and these unpromising little headphones with orange pads. I put it on, and pressed them, and that was the Walkman. And it was
one of the first one.
Pretty much. Probably one of the first ones that came into the UK.
And
you thought, this will change everything. And it did.
No, I mean,
it really did.
Again, you recognise it changed everything. I'd have probably put it on and thought, this is terrible. And then been amazed as it took over the world. One of the pieces we're running is your review of Off the Wall, Michael Jackson's Off the Wall.
For sounds.
And it's just such a good review.
Oh, that's very kind.
Well, no,
I never go back and read everything again. But
one is you describe him singing the way he dances, that you can actually kind of see him moving when you listen to it. But you get the album perfectly because it's half great. And the half good bit is the up-tempo stuff. And Michael Jackson was always a poor ballad singer.
Yeah, that's true.
And you always kind of really regretted that he had to kind of like chuck 2 or 3 of the things on his album, especially his duets with people like Paul McCartney.
Although you do admit you're affected by She's Out of My Life.
How about do I?
Which is fine. I think that's okay. But you are right on the money about that record. So often, whether it's guests who come in or just writers we know, they've really sort of got it wrong about an album.
Right. Well, I'm sure I've done that. I've done that.
Well, of course, we've all done it.
But I mean,
because you've got to do it in a hurry.
But you are so right about Off the Wall.
Because you've got to come to an opinion.
Yes.
And most of the time, you don't have an opinion.
But it absolutely stands up, that review. And I found it, proofread it, to put up on the site. And it was like, this is absolutely it. This is Off the Wall, which is one of the great records, but one of the great imperfect records. I mean, that's almost the thing. It's not a perfect record.
Right. Well, same with Thriller, really, which I think actually gets better with time.
There's a sting beat, and it's coming after you. You can dig it if you only let your feelings through.
So, Sounds NME, and then this incredible decade that you had, where I suppose the peak moment was Live Aid and Bob Geldof using the F word liberally.
Yeah.
And you sort of encouraging.
Well, no, I wasn't particularly. Which is now kind of immortalised on celluloid. If it's still celluloid,
yes,
in the Bohemian Rhapsody film, which of course I'm the only person in the world who've not seen. And,
Who plays you then?
An actor. Well, I was on
actor.
Danny Baker's show on 5 Live at the time one of my books came out, and Danny had the guy who was the actor on the phone talking
While you're sitting.
Yeah, talking about what he'd been asked to impersonate, and it was a completely innocent thing, And I've never seen it since. I have to get Mark Allen to go and check it because occasionally people try and tell me what it said, and I said, I've got no memory of that at all. Mark goes and checks it and says, you're quite right. These people are making it up. So I've been told by cab drivers all over the world that what Bob Geldof said was give us your fucking money. He never did at all.
No. What did he actually
He
say?
says, fuck the address.
Fuck the address. Is that the only F?
There may have been another one later. I don't think it was when I was doing it. But because basically, the boring explanation is the BBC in those days, they didn't want to be seen to be doing a kind of charity, what do you call it? A fundraising thing.
Right.
And so the ways that you could communicate were you could write in, you could send your postal order or your check, you could go to a post office, or you could use the phone lines.
Yeah.
And I had to say these instructions in that order because that was the order the captions came up.
Yeah.
Because don't forget, this is in the Stone Age of television. They couldn't do these things that they can do now. And said, "Okay, Bob, well, let's just go to the address." And he went, "Fuck the address." And I just sat there thinking, I hope my mother's not. And of course she was. And it was just, I mean, the only thing I remember about Live Aid was how hot it was. It was an incredibly hot day, and I still believe that that's the reason people remember it with such affection. Had it rained, seriously, the pictures would not have been as good. It would not have gone on BBC One. It would not be remembered in the way they were. I'd say it's a similar case. Sorry, to going over to it laterally. I did an interview with Paul McCartney a few weeks ago for about Abbey Road for Radio Times, and of course he made a very good point. Talking about the cover of Abbey Road, 6 pictures, 3 times across the road. They thought about doing it. It had been sketched out.
Yeah.
He says the thing that makes the difference is the weather's so good.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely true.
2 weeks ago, David, we tried to recreate it in a rather lazy fashion. There's a crossing outside that you crossed about 45 minutes ago. And unfortunately, it wasn't a very
just
nice
there.
day.
Yeah.
Matt Snow played John.
Right.
Yeah, I was.
You were Paul.
Yeah, no, I was Ringo.
No, you were Ringo.
Or
You were
Pringle
Ringo.
Star, as someone
Yes.
says. Chris.
Jasper over here was Paul, and I was in double denim as George.
Oh, right.
But it wasn't a lovely day, and it wasn't Abbey Road.
And we looked nothing like the Beatles.
It was the weakest, flimsiest sort of visual.
Just to continue on this tangent for a moment, because you can never talk about the cover of Abbey Road too much, in my experience.
Okay.
I went to see Mark Lewison's run-through of his fantastic Hornsey Road, Abbey Road, presentation.
Yeah.
And it was way too long, but it was brilliant. And he was looking to cut it, and he said, any suggestions for what to cut? I said, Mark, if you cut one thing, cut all the pastiches of Abbey Road, because they're an embarrassment. There is not one of them that looks good.
Like ours.
What? Don't take anybody. It's been done millions of times, and all it does is point out the perfection of the original.
Exactly. Well, I'm sorry I raised it. the subject now.
You and Mark also presented the old whistle test for quite a stretch. Sadly, the one time I played the old whistle test, playing keyboards for Micro Disney, he wasn't there.
All right.
And he was
guest.
And it was substituted by Simon Bates. And
Simon?
I know, but for
Standing in for you.
some extraordinary reason. And we were walking down one of those long curving corridors in Television Centre, and he was walking ahead of us, backwards, apologising for being on the show. It was just the strangest encounter.
Well, anyway.
I'm amazed. I'll tell you a word for it, because I get emails from people all the time saying, I'm just watching you interview whoever, Kate Bush or whatever. I go, didn't do it. Not me. Never met her, whatever. And then they sent me a link.
And there, sure enough.
And
sure enough,
and it was you.
Did you enjoy doing the whistle test?
No, terrified.
Really?
It was live mostly.
Well, yeah.
You know, and we used to just pace behind the curtains before it went live, Mark and I looking at each other and saying, if somebody said to you right now you could go home, would you go home? Sure. Oh, yes.
It's frightening. It's terrifying.
It was absolutely terrifying.
Yeah. Yes.
But then again, you know, in retrospect, I'm kind of glad I did it.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
because you get a lot of mileage out of that.
You do.
I do that. You know, when I do speaking things, there's always somebody says, "Oh, you know, whistle test or whatever,"
Yes.
and I always make it part of my CV. I say, you know, was sworn out by Bob Geldof in front of the largest television audience on earth.
Yeah, exactly.
And so there's always a story to tell.
Yeah, yeah.
And you and Mark are a great double act, and you're still.
It's
I mean,
extraordinary.
closest of friends. I used to do the Word podcast.
We're very close friends.
Yeah, and that's something really lovely about that.
Sustained professional and personal friendship over that sort of period of time. It's like
Well,
said,
40 plus
unique,
years.
full stop. You know, I mean, it's incredibly rare. It's great.
I suppose so. Yeah. I don't know why it is. You know, we don't occupy that world at all. I suppose that kind of helps.
Mm.
You know, we're both married to women who couldn't have less interest in what we do.
I think that helps too. I'm the same. Yes. Yeah. I don't think my wife's ever listened to our podcast.
No.
I tried to stop her doing it. But actually, one of the things I was thinking the other day was we had Ian Penman in as a guest, and then he was your guest on the Word podcast. Sorry, it's getting a bit incestuous here.
Yes.
But actually, what was rather nice was that once upon a time, there were all these sorts of factions, weren't there, in the world of rock journalism and music journalism. And, you know, if you'd been doing a podcast in the 80s, I don't think you'd have had Ian Penman, but we're all sorts of friends now, aren't we? Which is rather sweet.
I suppose so, yeah. Hostilities are over.
Well, because, I mean, my understanding was, and you may correct this, so feel free, that when you and Mark launched Q, the sort of brief really was anything that isn't like something like anything that isn't like Paul Morley and Ian Penman is probably acceptable.
It was funny. That was the first thing Ian said when I was talking to him the
probably
other week,
was. Yeah.
and because he was really rather pleased with this.
Yes, of course.
And
Great
I
claim.
don't remember it, but I wouldn't be surprised if it might have been said at some point.
I imagine it probably was.
You know, because Q was about telling stories.
Yes.
It wasn't particularly about your opinion.
No. And the perpendicular pronoun was
so
frowned upon.
the enemy was a kind of weekly unfolding
Yeah.
stream of opinion, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But Q was setting out to be something different.
Yeah.
I mean,
You know, I never knew Ian at all. I mean, I've only met Ian, and we don't have a relationship particularly at all. But I met him at Danny Baker's house. It was the first time I'd met him, and this is, you know, it's only a few years ago. I think it was the first time I'd met him, and he's one of those people that I become mates through social media.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing, you know what I mean? Because
Yes.
I think he's a fabulous writer, and I think he's really original.
Yeah. He's become...
I think he writes about music in a way that most people don't.
Yeah. I mean, he's become a great writer. I mean, I struggled him back... I mean, my idea of hell is proofreading a 3,000-word interview with Green from Scritti Politis in 1979 because I won't understand a word they're talking about.
No.
But stuff he writes for like London Review of Books these days is just fabulous writing. It's so good. You know?
Yes. Yes.
I think we've talked about it already on the podcast.
Well, I think we probably have, so it'll probably be cut out anyway.
By the ruthless podcast assassin over there.
Well, so I mean, you've launched many magazines. The Word, which I'm looking at issues of The Word up there, which there was some wonderful writing in that, including the last of the three pieces that were featuring by you, a lovely profile of Emmylou Harris that you did in 2003, and you went to New York. You're going to say, no, I didn't.
No, I didn't.
I deny it.
I did.
Never interviewed Emmylou Harris. But it's just a nice piece about her. And there's a lovely moment where you're in her suite at the Ritz-Carlton and her publicist brings in a bunch of pictures of her from the 70s, you know, like those sort of elite hotel portraits. And you describe her looking through them. Oh my, she says to herself as she leafs through the images of her 25-year-old self. Will you look at me?
You know what? I think she's better looking now with all her massive grey hair.
I think she's always been good looking.
Yeah.
I don't think she's ever gone through a period where she wasn't good looking.
No.
And I don't think she's also... I think she's remarkable. I don't think she's ever made a bad record.
Yeah.
You describe her as, you were talking earlier about can we say this sort of thing anymore? You describe her as long-stemmed and delicate. Can we say that now? You can't say anything anymore.
I don't...
Political correctness gone mad.
oh, God.
Well, Do you know, I plucked that phrase out.
She's beautiful.
She's a beautiful
for God's
woman.
sake, isn't it?
And
also, she's a professional entertainer.
Yeah.
And, you know, and beauty, I'm sorry, it's part of the deal.
It
can
is.
come in all kinds of shapes and sizes.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
it's part of the deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will not have people denying that it's a factor.
and that I'd say applies to men as well as women.
Of course it does.
But then you see Ed Sheeran, you wonder sort of like something went wrong with the sort of the algorithm.
I know.
David, let's talk about your books.
Sorry.
The latest of which I'm holding in my hand. So 1971, Never a Dull Moment, kind of, you know, kicks off this amazing run of books that you've written. I mean, your output is extraordinary already. I don't know how you do it and everything else that you do. Let's talk about the new book, which is a rock and roll A-level. It's questions and answers. Very hard, it says here. You got one right. I think I got one right. Should we sort of randomly... Let me just pluck one out here. This is from the... Oh, no, I'm not going to go for the mathematics section. Let's at least pick
Yes, it
one.
is organised into
Home
subject...
economics.
All right, okay. It's organised according to subject categories, like a kind of an exam.
Yeah.
All right, Mark. Which colour sweets had to be removed from the bowls of M&M's provided in Van Halen's dressing room?
Now, that's
I know
It's
this.
a legitimate question.
Now, that is a completely legitimate question, isn't it?
Though we think you got
I know
one
the
wrong.
answer.
Yeah, think you got one wrong.
Oh.
The mullet.
Oh, yes, we did.
you
gosh.
mean this is the guy from the Beastie
Yes.
Boys, and so.
Yes, we're not going to be pedantic here, but we thought that...
But first of all, what colour of M&M's was excluded?
Brown.
Brown. That's absolutely correct.
That's absolutely right.
So, legitimate question.
Yeah,
You've got two right.
absolutely. No, we think the mullet was already a term in circulation before the Beastie.
I know what you mean. I don't know. I haven't got the book in front of me. I think I've tried to pick my words very carefully. So, you know, I think you can split hairs out in for
Yeah,
my...
but you see, you are talking to the world authority
On the mullet.
I wrote a book
Oh,
on
really?
mullets.
Oh, God.
So I'm afraid, you know, it's just incontrovertible.
But I
as they
think
might say.
so. It's who is it? One member of the Beastie Boys popularised the expression mullet via a feature in
Grand Royal magazine.
Grand Royal
yeah,
magazine.
and it was it was the greatest thing that had been written about the mullet hairstyle at that point. I'm just going to quote from your intro to the Rock and Roll A-level. So the book that you hold in your hands is dedicated to the proposition that the things pop music touches on are every bit as interesting as the music itself. And then you say, if you're looking for more examples of that most debased currency rock trivia, look elsewhere. But then you say, I love trivia, or as I prefer to call it, detail. Yeah. I mean, essentially, this stuff fascinates you and probably fascinates us as well. The minutiae.
Oh, yeah.
So what? I think you said you used to run a competition on
GLR.
BBC London, GLR, Greater London Radio. So that's where the idea was born. And so, what were your criteria for the questions? It's divided into... look, talking about there's some great pictures, lovely picture of David Lee Roth's chest, very hairy chest.
This started with the publisher. The publisher said, why do you write quiz books? Surely you can just store away a load of questions as you're working and note them down. Mm-hmm. That shows you what a kind of naive view
concept
they have of how these things are done. I kind of was flattered. I thought, all right, okay. And then I set to work. I thought, God, it's a major undertaking.
Yeah.
It took me absolutely ages because, you know, once I'd given myself the categories. But it's things like, okay, I'm interested in, and I think it's one of the questions in the book, Little Feet sailing shoes. Mm-hmm. The cover of is inspired by what painting?
Yes. Fragonard.
The Swing.
Right?
Which
that's fabulous. I mean, I'm sorry. You know,
and you can go further. Who was the famous spy who was the world authority on Fragonard?
That's more...
That's no...
Matahari.
Anthony Blunt.
Anthony Blunt.
Of course it would be.
He was an art critic.
Isn't... I think the Swing might be in the Wallace collection.
It's actually in the Frick Museum in New York.
All right.
And I've seen it with the naked eye, and I thought, sailing shoes.
No, you wouldn't.
No one else was going, oi, mate, little feet.
I absolutely love that.
Isn't
that kind of connection between...
Isn't that by Neon Park? No, it's Fragonard.
I'm always very taken, but I once heard Alan Bennett on the TV was talking about how T.S. Eliot married the daughter of his local butcher. He said, and that struck me as a fabulous magical connection between high art and low art, and that's always fascinating me. And I'm a bit the same. I love that kind of thing. You know,
I think a book like this is actually kind of the zeitgeist. It's actually perfect because like the pub quiz has become just a massive sort of thing. People like these sorts of things. I mean, for Christmas, this will be appearing in a lot of people's stockings.
I'm hoping it's the kind of thing that you can't Google the answer.
You know, you can Google.
I thought you could Google anything.
I think you pretty much can. Though it has to be said, pub quizzes and so on and so forth, they don't let you look at your mobile.
No, they certainly don't. That's right. Well, look, hours of fun here. The Rock and Roll A-Level, a very hard pop quiz by David Hepworth, our special guest. It's lovely talking. I mean, we could talk about so much more. Stick around, as we always say. We're going to be just talking about anything and everything, as we always do. Briefly talk about Elbow.
Well,
I'm apparently the only one who can talk about
Barney
Elbow.
Will talk.
I might look to Jasper at the back of the room and see if he can say something about it. No,
he's shaking.
He's ruled himself out as well. Well, look, so just simply that Elbow have a new album out. I rather like Elbow. I know it's incredibly uncool to like Elbow, although I think everybody pretty much likes Guy Garvey.
Well, as a chap.
As a man, as a human being, he is just a thoroughly decent dude.
I know.
In fact, probably too decent.
Too decent,
because I think it's become even in 2009, when there's a Dorian Lynskey piece from Q that year. And this is 10 years ago. Guy is saying to Dorian, I'm terrified of being cutesy, bumbling, sweet old teddy bear Guy. I'm aware I'm not sharp and gothic and cool, but I'd like to think there's more than that. Isn't he lovely thing? And in a way, he has become this sort of hail fellow, well met. This guy who doesn't look like a rock star at all, who gets, thousands of people at Glastonbury singing along to One Day Like This.
I know women who worship.
Yeah.
He's got a very, very strong female following. I think because he is actually a nice guy, and some women really quite like nice guys.
Well, so, I mean, I really
you cut
like...
that bit out, Jasper.
Nice guys come first. I really liked the first album a lot, I have to say. I haven't loved everything as much since then, but I thought Asleep in the Back, which was 2001, I thought was a really great, Manchester album that drew on sort of things like Spirit of Eden, Talk. It had those sort of sonics about it. And I just thought, and I interviewed them a couple of years after, I just really, really did like them as a band. It wasn't just him. It was a rare example of sitting down with 5 guys who'd actually been playing together for years already at that point, who just treated each other with affection and respect. And I was just really...
That's weird.
I know. Something wrong here. I mean, but they're still together. I mean, it's still the same lineup, which says everything. And the piece that Dorian did, they're sort of talking about how they go from being these perennial underdogs to national treasures. And it all really happened at Glastonbury when everyone sung along to One Day Like This. And I think since then, they're a band that can sell out the O2. And they are a sort of beloved institution now. I also just think he's a genuinely decent human being, a good role model. I heard him on the Romaniacs podcast the other day. I think with Dorian, funnily enough.
Yeah, that's enough of this good guy stuff, Barney.
Well,
Where do you stand on interviewing groups together?
Well, having interviewed the sort of reunited version of the Beach Boys with Mike Love sitting next to Brian Wilson.
When was that?
That was probably about 12 years ago or something. Right. When that album, what was it called? That song about God made songs on the radio or something.
Oh, okay.
Anyway,
I know them.
Anyway, I mean, I came into this recording studio and they were lined up in this sort of semicircle, and it was just surreal to see Mike and Brian next to each other. So that was the most extreme example. It can be really hard work.
It's terribly.
It can be incredibly hard work.
It's all their tension.
How many times have you had to do that, would you say?
Well, I'm sure I've done it loads of times, but if I ever have a choice,
don't do it.
Don't do it. No. Because bands, they're like political parties.
Yeah.
They don't tell the truth in front of each other.
There's always one member sitting there sulking.
Or one of them does, and everything goes to hell.
Whatever. The tension between bands. Bands fascinate me. It's kind of social organisation.
Absolutely.
They're unique.
Anyway, Elbow's new album, Giants of All Sizes, is out this week. I believe it is quite sort of Brexit themed, according to what I heard of Guy on the Romaniacs podcast. So I think safe to say that he's on our side. Let's just leave it at that.
Okay.
These
Ellipses.
yes,
Ellipses.
these turbulent times.
Yeah.
So that's everything that's free on RBP this week. Mark, tell us about the week's audio.
Well, it's grim and hilarious simultaneously. Jim Sullivan on the phone to the
late.
recently deceased Ginger Baker. And dear old Jim, I mean, I know our emails back and forth between him and ourselves over the last couple of days, he said, it was probably one of the most difficult experiences of his life. He rings up,
How long ago was this?
Not long ago.
2015.
Oh, right, okay.
And Ginger's back in England, having lost his South African ranch. We will all
Most
see.
recent.
Yeah, it's his most recent catastrophe. And he's on the phone, and Jim's kind of trying to draw him out, and he's just getting monosyllabic answers. What? I didn't say that. It's just extraordinary.
Because the film Beware of Mr. Baker's just come out,
Yeah.
and of course doesn't come out terribly flatteringly. So it's like there's a lot of things in that film that aren't right,
Well, the first clip we'll listen to is him talking about his relationship with his family. I mean, this is the funny clip. Later on, we're going to run the one bit where he actually strings about 3 sentences together when he's talking about his heroin addiction. It is the only coherent part of the entire interview, really, isn't it? But, we'll listen to this bit where he talks about his relationship with his family.
I don't know what people say about me, do I?
I guess some of the things that were in the movie about your personality, your relationship with your family, etc.
What about my relationship with my family?
Well, it's suggested that hasn't, over the course of your various marriages and children, that hasn't been a very smooth ride, I guess.
How do you mean?
Well, in that you've caused a fair amount of damage by doing what you've done, from, being with groupies to not paying attention to the kids at certain times.
Who told you that?
Well, again, I'm getting this from the people in the movie, interviewed in the movie.
Well, you talking about Kofi?
That would be one of them, yeah.
Yeah. Take most of what Kofi says with a pinch of salt. Right?
Okay. All right.
That's his son.
Oh, my.
I mean, by this point, it was quite late in the interview, Jim is saying things just to provoke a reaction, actually. All that stuff about the groups and all. He wants to get Ginger to say something, and I think he'd finally figured the only way to do it was to be fairly provocative. But, I mean, that is the interview. Is what?
Yeah.
I saw the film, and I came away from the film thinking, as I increasingly think nowadays, I'd love to make a film about the families of rock stars.
Right.
Yeah.
All the collateral damage,
Yeah.
in the wake of these people's drive for success.
Yeah.
The world is full of people who've had to live in the shadow.
Yeah.
Should we put Ginger Baker just in context for anyone who wonders exactly who we're talking about? I mean, his death has been, obituaries everywhere. I mean, he was, challenge me if this doesn't sound right, probably the first superstar drummer in rock. He kind of invented the idea of, if there's guitar heroes, he was a drum hero, wasn't he?
He's the only one.
This was the original power trio. It was Cream. He came out of a jazz background, had been playing with Jack Bruce. They hooked up with Eric Clapton and formed sort of the first supergroup, really. Mm-hmm. And they were loud and heavy, and they did a lot of improvisation. And Marshall Stacks, it was
2 bass drums.
It was the invention of like heavy blues rock with the most incredibly powerful drummer who may also have been the single most unpleasant man in the history of rock and roll.
Oh, that's funny.
Who really accepted?
No. It reminds me of the Fawlty Towers. No, I won't have that said. There's a place in London.
But he wore that as a badge of pride.
He talks about the Cream reunion. Unfortunately, he doesn't talk about how it ended. And it ended the same way that his relationship with Jack Bruce first ended with the Graham Bond organisation, when they had a fight on stage, and the Cream reunion ended with them having a fight on stage. Yeah.
I saw him with the Graham Bond organisation.
Did you?
1966, on tour in Wakefield.
Oh my God! Well, funny, after listening to Ginger, this audio, I listened to Jack Bruce, and who comes up as I don't think Jack Bruce was the nicest guy, but compared to Ginger Baker,
sweetheart,
his absolute sweetheart, and he says, what happened was Ginger pulled a knife on me in the Graham Bond. It was an audition. He pulled his knife on me and told me I was fired from the group because I was too busy. I mean, pulled a fucking knife.
I know. He talks about how he feels he's respected by the great jazz drummers, because he did work with a lot of these people. I assume in their part mostly for money. Because I've got this Elvin Jones quote from 1970. He was talking to Life magazine, and he's asked about rock drums. He says, Keith Moon, he's a drummer. Everything the band does goes through him. Ginger Baker, nothing happening. Cat's got delusions of grandeur with no grounds.
Oh, really? Because they had a famous drum battle at the Lyceum, didn't they?
I think they did.
Elvin Jones and Ginger Baker.
I think they did. And what's strange about that also is that in this audio interview, Jim is talking about Elvin's being a mate of Ginger's.
Yeah, which I don't think
Max Roach the same.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's a mate of Ginger's. I mean, the one thing about the movie is the extraordinary isolation he seems to live in, with that sort of black, almost like mail order bride, which was, it was, and he's bullying his son on camera.
Yeah.
I mean,
but also, I mean, I don't know much about the reunion, but I sort of got the impression it was a kind of pension top-up.
I think.
And Clapton doesn't need his pension topping up.
Though
I
apparently
wouldn't imagine.
Ginger in this interview claims that Clapton was the one who suggested it.
Okay,
Yeah,
but he
but
might have
partly out
suggested
of-
it as a benefit for the rest of them.
I
I think this is a big issue
Yeah.
with bands who've been going for years.
Yeah.
That's why the E Street Band or whatever, they're always nervously hanging on. Are we going to get another tour? Because that makes a massive difference to these people.
Yeah.
And there's usually one person who decides
Yes.
whether it happens.
The same thing with
Clapton was
Neil
the-
Young, Crazy Horse. Of course.
Yeah.
You know, they've sometimes spent years in the wilderness waiting for that call from you.
Absolutely.
You know.
Yeah, no, that's all.
Do we? I mean, we've sometimes talked about Ginger Baker. I mean, do I really think he's such a great drummer? I mean, you know, if it's a toss up between him, like John Bonham or Keith Moon, or
Mitch Mitchell,
Levon Helm, Mitch. I mean, I just think that Ginger, for the most part, is just really all about thunder and power.
Yeah.
Is he really that great a drummer?
Well, I find his contempt for other drummers kind of disqualify him being a great drummer. Because if you're a really great drummer, you really like what I was saying about Elvin Jones liking Keith Moon. Completely different type of drummer, a completely different area, but understanding what Keith does for the Who. Ginger Baker's slagged off John Bonham over and over again. Now, John Bonham comes from a different tradition. John Bonham's out of Al Jackson. He's out of Memphis R&B drumming, and so it's doing a different job, you know.
But he had feel that I don't think Ginger Baker has ever had, I'm afraid.
Well, in his defence, I liked Disraeli Gears.
Well, the live stuff.
Disraeli Gears. No, the studio album, Disraeli Gears, which they made bludgeoningly in a day, I think.
Yeah.
And I like his sound. I think it was a Sunshine of Your Love, where they were looking for a way to do it, and Arma Tertigan was in the studio, and he said, do it like Apache by the Shadows.
Right.
And so if you listen to it, he's playing Apache by the Shadows all the way through that.
Well, that's really
and I do like that, because, they're quite economical songs, those. Yeah. It's a great... The weird thing, I said this on social media the other day after he died, is that people forget, is that we used to dance to Cream. And if you listen to Disraeli Gears, it's full of snappy tunes that you can dance to. And so, in that sense, there were Ginger's group, like the Stones and Charlie's group. What happens with posterity? It always takes over. It always becomes about the songwriters.
Well, Jack
or the guys out the front.
Jack Bruce said it was Ginger's group, in a sense, when they first formed.
Yeah.
One of the most dismaying things in the audio is when Jim asks him about Air Force and about working with Fela Kuti. And, this really interesting thing he did. He went to Nigeria. You'd think that would produce something. He just, there's a long silence and he just goes, pause. I mean, Really, can you not do any better
do you
than
not
that?
think it's possible? It's the kind of person who was actually appallingly shy, and therefore the only way he could present himself was by being unpleasant,
Really obnoxious,
and
yeah.
terse. You know what I mean? 'Cause
Yeah.
he couldn't
Maybe.
bring himself to show any weakness,
I think you're
any
probably right.
vulnerability of any kind. You know,
And maybe that sort of keys him with his heroin addiction and so on and so forth. So, heroin as a way of actually kind of shielding himself off from the world in a way.
Yeah.
Maybe
And we'll hear a bit more about that.
And at the end, we will hear a bit more about that. I'd like to go on to what's going into the library. Dawn James interviews The Who for Rave in 1966. Dawn James is one of our favourite writers.
I used to buy Rave in '96.
Yeah, well,
Did you?
yeah.
You don't look old enough.
And we got him as a guest in the podcast.
Very influential magazine.
A few months back. It's a fantastic magazine, and also it had longer interviews with artists than anything else. You never got interviews that long in the NME or Melody Maker. Well, Melody Maker you occasionally get the long one in the mid-60s. But
Proper profiles.
Proper profiles.
Yeah.
So she gets to meet The Who, and she takes an instant dislike to them. Partly because they're being really bolshy. They're sort of in their full aggression mode. Pete Townsend answers most of the questions, and he says things like, "Drugs don't harm you. I know. I take them. I'm not saying I use opium or heroin, but hashish is harmless, and everyone takes it." Now, to have that printed in a pop magazine in 1966,
it's surprising, isn't it?
is really quite something.
Yeah.
She then writes a paragraph saying, "Well, I don't take it.
Tut,
I don't
tut.
tut."
Were all these things illegal at that point?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah. And so Ethan carries on like this. You must get your kicks where you find them. Everyone needs kicks. We get some of ours through our work, but this is a real case of the interviewees and the interviewer really not seeing eye to eye on anything. But one reason I like Dawn James is she gets that into the piece in a way that most journalists in those
and
days
most male journalists wouldn't have. No.
I mean, well, that's not entirely true because Keith Altham is very good at getting stuff in between lines, like the time he interviewed Cream, going back to Jamaica, and they were all on acid, and they were at Primrose Hill, and he doesn't say they're on acid, but you read the piece, you know that's exactly what he's saying. And also, anyone interviewing Van Morrison when he was with them will allude to the fact that they're some of the most unpleasant people they've ever met in their lives as working journalists.
Can you imagine
does
having
that apply to the whole group?
Can you imagine having a drink with Ginger Baker and Van Morrison and Lou Reed?
Red hair.
Moving on to 68, LA Times. I occasionally find, one of my jobs is to look online to find pieces in various newspaper libraries, newspapers.com and so on. And I found, and Tom Nolan's one of our favourite writers, writing for Rolling Stone and people like that in the late 60s. And he's writing this piece about what he calls the company freaks, who were the new generation of record company executives, who
had hair below their collar.
House hippies.
House
Hippies,
hippies.
exactly.
And this is February 68, this piece. So this is a generation of guys, including Andy Wickham, an Englishman who was part of that sort of scene. And what's interesting is that Barney and I were talking about this afterwards, and Barney was saying to me how right-wing Andy Wickham had become.
That's my understanding.
Yeah. And what's interesting is his loathing of what he was doing was starting to come through even then. He says a lot of this comes from the way the music is treated. It's like a supermarket. So many pounds of this meat costs so much. The price of the meats fluctuates. The Grateful Dead before Monterey were worth so much, after Monterey worth so much more, like meat in a supermarket. This is a man who's clearly rapidly falling out of love with the music business.
He really did. Fascinating man, actually, because I think it's really interesting that stable of like Warner Reprise artists that started with Joni and that they put together then that became so influential. He was really responsible. He signed Joni, this Brit, Brit in LA, who then sort of really took against the counterculture. And at a certain point, I think he moved to Nashville because country music was the only music that he liked because it wasn't like hippie long hair music. Yeah. Very, very strange.
This is a really great piece. It's long. It's about almost 4,000 words, and it's I don't know if Barney, if you'd read it when you were doing Waiting for the Sun or your cooking.
I read it 2 or 3 Nolan pieces, and I did interview Tom.
It's probably the first time anyone outside of the industry itself came aware of this notion of the house hippie, the company freak, and how straight-laced the music business was, especially in Los Angeles at that time. There's a lot of people in suits. We were talking about Joe Smith with his blazer, going down to see the Grateful Dead at Fillmore West. and been told not to drink any water or be offered any drinks because it will be spiked. He's there with his wife in Crimpling.
Yeah.
So these people were quite important. It was bringing people in who knew how to talk to the FM, he talks to an FM station guy, the new FM stations, how to talk to all of these sorts of subsections and get things together. It's a great piece. Billy Paul, interviewed by Robin Katz for Disc in 73.
Robin Katz?
I know.
Used to have Smash Hits?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Big fan of Robin Katz. She actually kind of got in, she sent us a whole lot of her clippings and all that.
Where is she now? She's in the
She's in America.
Yeah, she's back in America.
Jersey?
She was a really good writer about black music. And a couple of weeks ago, we spoke about her interview with Bill Withers, which is just electrifyingly good. And this is good too. I mean, Billy Paul's not Bill Withers. Hasn't got. But he says, "Me and Mrs. Jones" is a song that could relate to anybody. This is the age that it's happening in. Marriage is a dying thing. He says, the situation's been going on all this time. I think everyone has a Mrs. or Mr. Jones sometimes, So that's good stuff.
Speak for yourself, Billy.
Well, I suspect he was.
Me and Mrs. Jones, we got a thing going on.
John Swenson, Rolling Stone, in July 77. So this had been a month before they came to that not very good English tour, Little Feat, when Little Feat came to... And it's all
second tour.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's all about Lowell's sort of gradual retreat from the band. And so the opening paragraph, the opening paragraph more or less is, when we really get going, we can play music as complex as Weather Report or Herbie Hancock, Little Feat pianist Bill Payne contends, after a set of steaming rock funk at Washington's Warner Theatre. Except we're coming from a rock basis instead of jazz. This isn't necessarily an overstatement, since Payne co-wrote Little Feat's dazzling fusion instrumental, A Day at the Dog Race, on their latest album, Time Loves a Hero. The track is especially meaningful. It clearly indicates the musical direction most of Little Feat favour, and it's the only tune in which lead singer-guitarist Lowell George doesn't play during the live shows. And the rest of the article goes on to sort of say, but it's all going to be great, and Lowell will come back and all that sort of stuff. But this is basically... the chasm is appearing here.
I met Lowell George briefly.
Did you? Wow.
So when's the first tour? 75?
75,
yeah.
Okay, so Warner Brothers Music Show, and they had...
You were there. You were at the Rainbow.
I was at the Rainbow.
As I was.
And
I didn't see you.
Right. And they had a reception to launch the tour at the American Embassy in Grosvenor Square.
That's right. And you were invited.
And I went along, and we talked to Bill Payne, who was very nice, and then Lowell George lurched up, and he remains the most out-to-lunch individual I've ever been in the company of in my life.
That's something.
I think he was a bit jet-lag, tiredness, drugs, God knows what. But that show was just extraordinary that Sunday afternoon.
Yes, it was.
I'm so fed up. I didn't get to see it. I guess what we're saying here is all three of us love Little Feat.
Absolutely. Little Feat are the only group I've got loads of bootlegs by. They used to buy bootlegs at literally a shop that was a hole in the wall just off Carnaby Street. And, they used to pay a fortune for these things.
I mean, Electric Lycanthrope is fantastic.
Fantastic.
Well, of course, nowadays you can hear them all digitally.
That's right.
They sound perfect.
This is sort of coming full circle back to Fragonar, aren't we?
Right. Never far from Fragonar.
Never far from Fragonar. Moving to 1981, this is Richard Cromelin on the phone to Jerry Dammers, the Specials. Ghost Town's just come out as a single in America. And Jerry Dammers sounds really low, And actually the band already were splintering in 81, weren't they? They were about to sort of morph into the Special AKA.
It was not a happy camp
it was not
by
the
time Ghost Town came out.
So Richard Cromelin says, despite its alluring music, Ghost Town is one of the most downbeat records ever to go to number one. It's not a very hopeful piece of music. And Dammers says, well, as I say, it was written in a space of complete depression. On a more personal level, it was about disillusionment with rock and roll and the alienation and paranoia that success, inverted commas, brings. With all the demands people make on you, they become very frightening, ghost-like figures. I don't want to make a big issue of this, but success has brought a lot of unhappiness. I'm sorry, I'm going from one crumbling rock musician.
Yeah, I know. You've got this almost morbid interest
Yes,
in the unravelling
See,
of beloved rock groups.
Unsuccessful groups are happier than successful groups
I don't know about that.
No, I think there may be something in that.
because they're all searching for the same objective.
That's true.
As soon as they get successful, they always feel that somebody's got the credit
Yeah.
that they should have.
What's the next unhappy band?
Actually, this is Fred Schroers interviewing the three main protagonists of Desperately Seeking Susan, which is Madonna, Rosanna Arquette, and Susan Seidelman, the director. And I don't got any quotes from it, but it's a really interesting piece, really well worth reading. And what comes out of it is actually Susan Seidelman's great. She's a bright, blah, blah. Madonna's great. Madonna knows even then, and it's 1985, it's quite early in her career, you know. She is someone who she can be a little bit touchy here and there. Rosanna Arquette is unbearable. Oh, really? She's a complete space cadet, eating her vitamin pills and sort of spouting New Age bilge by the yard. Yeah. They're all talking about a sort of, you get the feeling, slightly fake female solidarity that these three protagonists had about the making of the movie and so on and so forth. Rosanna Arquette clearly struggled with Susan Seidelman as a director. She's someone who wants to be stroked all the time on set, whilst, you know, and she says, well, I wasn't treated like that by Martin Scorsese, you know. It's sort of stuff. Sure. Very briefly, Just Ice, interviewed by Sean O'Hagan for The Enemy in 89.
Not his real name.
And this man is just such a complete tosser. This town is full of suckers who try and test you. I'm like this. You fuck with me, mother, I'm going to shoot you point blank. And I want to shoot him. Yeah, I love the way my 38 sounds when it goes off and spits fire. I love guns. His album had a Stop the Violence sticker on the cover. And an anonymous Sleeping Bag Records employee says, when I think of Just Ice, I don't think Stop the Violence, I think Start the Violence.
Yeah, it got on well with Ginger Baker.
And the very last one actually alludes to the audio interview we listened to a couple of weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, which is Tony Sherman's interview with Robbie Robertson about his very early days with the Hawks, with Ronnie Hawkins and so on. And what Tony Sherman's done is take these yards of recordings he's done and basically just transcribe them. So it's not an interview, it's in Robbie's voice. And he's been very faithful to what Robbie said, because one of the clips that we played in that broadcast is reproduced pretty much word for word. One thing about that is that he was a good storyteller, Robbie Robertson. You can wind him up and let him go, and he'll tell the stories. And he said one thing he said was really interesting, especially in the light of the fact that they were absolutely on the outs at this time. He says, the majority of the stuff that I was really connected to came from the South, and Leven kind of represented that to me. That Robbie, he talks in this interview about getting that train down that Ronnie Hawkins has said, you know, come on down. So I got this train from Canada all the way down to Arkansas. This is like a 3-day train journey. And seeing the landscape changing and becoming really excited, you know, and just suddenly he'd feeling this different quality of heat that he'd never felt before, you know. And then going down there, and there's all this band of, they're all Arkansas boys at that point, with their arms folded, looking at this kid from Canada, you know.
He was the one with the vision, wasn't he?
But I mean, with Ronnie Hawkins, he was just an electrifyingly good lead guitar player. Joining a band which had already had two. That's the thing, you know, already had two. It's a very interesting interview.
It's worth pointing out it's all happening for Robbie Robertson this month, because not only does his solo album Cinematic come out,
will it be as dreadful as his previous solo albums?
I have no doubt it won't be very
Cinematic.
good. It's spelled SINEM.
Oh,
anyway, let's.
God,
but more importantly,
well
the Scorsese-directed band documentary "Once Were Brothers" is now out. I believe it's now out on Netflix. I was looking for it last night. I couldn't find it. So maybe it's today. It might be today.
So is it the case? Now, you're the expert on the band, Barney.
An expert.
No, I'd say probably
You're the experts in the room. And you'll do for me, Barney. It is what's happening to Robbie Robertson right now, a kind of example of a very interesting syndrome that I think Paul McCartney has also. It's happened to Paul McCartney. Is that when two or more members of your band die,
you own the story.
You get to be the band.
You own the narrative. Really.
You own the narrative.
Yeah.
In the nicest possible way. I'm not saying anything unkind at all.
No.
But you can go out and say, this is what happened, and nobody's going to disagree with you.
No,
and as we've seen in Ginger Baker, you know, even when people were still alive, they were arguing about absolutely everything that happened.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, personalities before principles and all that. I do think it's interesting. This very week, I've got into this kind of email exchange with a writer whose name I won't mention, American writer, who seems to have kind of undertaken this mission to dispel the kind of consensus that sort of Levon was the sort of good old boy and Robbie was a sort of scheming careerist, you know, and he depicts through some personal experiences with Levon as a complete scumbag whose word must not be believed at all. And Robbie's got such an unfair rap. And I think the truth is somewhere in the middle.
Well,
I really do.
In every band, the truth is somewhere in the middle.
I think that there's various things. I think, first of all, Robbie Robertson as a songwriter only had so many songs in him, and I think that applies to a lot of songwriters. The assumption you're going to keep changing. So, in a way, the last 3 or 4 years of the band was slightly pointless anyway, because they really weren't making particularly good records. I mean, Northern Light, Southern Cross was a bit of a return
was a good album,
but they'd produced all kinds of bilge before that. So the band really should have broken up anyway. And then he's done nothing interesting since musically. He really, really hasn't.
That's your lot.
That's my lot.
I only want to just briefly mention before we wrap up, I think we should note the passing of Barry Masters, the lead singer of Eddie and the Hot Rods. So Eddie and the Hot Rods they were kind of the missing link between kind of pub rock and punk, weren't they?
3 months, they were the hippest group in Britain.
Right, for 3
They really
months.
were.
I saw them and I just thought, I'd rather see Dr. Feelgood any day of the week.
They
And
were kind of younger and sexy.
They were younger and sexy, but
He had a
musically,
nice torso, didn't he? He had a
They
good
were
torso.
really hot stuff for 3 months.
Well,
Honestly.
there's the countervailing opinion, you see. But I mentioned this partly because a rather nice experience that Adam Sweeting, who has written the Guardian obituary for Barry Masters, sent me a rather plaintive email, I think probably about a week ago. I'm desperately trying to find out something about Barry Masters' childhood and adolescence. I can't find anything, not even on Rock's back pages, he says. And I'm really sorry, I'm not sure we can help. And then the very next day, the lovely, wonderful Darryl Easley, who used to work at Universal, sent me these liner notes that he had done for an Eddie and the Hot Rods compilation where Barry Masters talks all about his childhood and adolescence and what came before Eddie and the Hot Rods. I mean, I didn't think they were a great band, to be honest, but I get that at that point, no one knew about the Pistols or what was just around the corner. So it was different from Supertramp. Should we just say that?
But it's interesting. You talk about that with Robbie Robertson. You know, the truth about rock bands doesn't matter who they are. They have a very brief period of inspiration, followed by a very long career. You know.
Yeah.
And if you have a hit early on, you're married to each other for the rest of your life.
It's a difficult marriage. It's a difficult marriage. Yeah. Yes. I mean, we're like a rock band here at Rock's Back Pages.
Well, I was thinking about him and Mark Allen.
David, it's been such a pleasure having you here.
It's been fun being on your cupboard.
Oh, bless you. Thank you so much. Come back to our cupboard any time. So just to reiterate, David's book, The Rock and Roll A-Level, A Very Hard Pop Quiz, is out this week, and all his other books are available, published by Bantam Press. All Bantam Press?
Yeah.
And all available in the usual places. So go seek them. And I'm actually, I think, coming on your podcast in December.
You are?
Mark's invited me to talk about Tom Waits.
Tom Waits' 70th birthday.
That's right. I shall look forward to seeing you again then,
Cheers.
David. And that's it from us. We'll be back next week, same time, same place. Thanks for joining us.
We're going to go out with a last clip from Ginger Baker talking about heroin.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.
How do you think, looking back on it now, about what it did and what it did to you?
Oh, I don't really think about it.
Do you think it's almost, is it kind of an inevitable musician's curse? I mean, I know Phil introduced you to it.
No, you didn't.
He did not?
No.
Oh, okay. That's what the movie suggested. How did you...
The movie might suggest it, but the movie's fucking wrong if it does that.
Okay. How did you...
I wrote a book where the story is in it.
Okay, I haven't read the book, I have to admit. But so how
Read that.
how did you get introduced to it then?
It's a guy called Dickie DeVere, another good drummer.
Mm-hmm.
I was using smack before I met Phil.
Ah, okay.
And when Phil found out, he burst into tears.
Because
He was always warning me about, don't do it, you know. And I was already doing it.
Right.
I didn't know.
Right.
What's inside of you?
That was Ginger Baker in conversation with Jim Sullivan in 2015, concluding this week's Rock's Back Pages podcast. Many thanks to special guest David Hepworth. His new book, The Rock and Roll A-Level, is out on October 17th and published by Bantam Press. The hosts are Barney Hoskyns and Mark Pringle, and the producer was Jasper Murison Bowie. You can find thousands of articles, as well as hundreds of full-length audio interviews at rocksbackpages.com.